Shabbat Shalom. Today we're going to talk about the Parasha, this Parasha, the second Parasha of the story of Abraham, our father. And this Parasha will have many major lessons and stories and ideas. To talk about those ideas will take us a very long time. But first of all, we will start with the story, with a few comments, and we will say one idea that we can learn from it. So, we're beginning from the story of the Brit, the circumcision that Abraham did for himself and to all his property and people and servants and family. And he is begging, yearning for guests, because Abraham, as we know, is a person of kindness, person of having guests. About guests, it's very interesting. We can talk about it for a long time, but the Midrash tell us that Abraham had his own way to bringing people to a bit more close to God. One of his methods was that he would bring food for people that are enjoying his tent in the desert, and in the end he would give them a high price for the food. He would tell them, no one will bring you such a food in this desert. But if they couldn't pay, so he told them, say a blessing to God and you will not need to pay. And it's very interesting. What is the worth of this kind of blessing? And a bit deeper explanation of that is that he just revealed there is times that you don't want to feel such a feeling. You don't want to acknowledge something. You want to escape something. And Avraham, in some times, even did need to explain the ideas of one God and one Creator, and he just needed to force a bit of stress, and people themselves recognize. And it's something that we also can take for ourselves. Sometimes we avoiding some understanding, some feelings, and God needs to take us to the position that we cannot avoid anymore those qualities or things that we have, and then we start using them. Okay, Avraham waiting for guests and not having. Why? Because God wants Avraham to rest. He did a circumcision in the age of 99, and he resting. And but then he's seeing three guests that look human, but they are not. They are coming to visit Avraham. They are angels. One came to heal Avraham. The second one to give him the blessing or prophet that he will have a son named Yitzchak. And the third one came to destroy Siddom. By the way, what is the connection between the angel that's going to destroy Siddom to Avraham? The connection is that Avraham, as we're learning in the continuous story of the parasha, that Avraham, the land already belonged to Avraham, and God himself wanted that Avraham would know beforehand and will agree. And as we see in the story, Avraham did not agree so quickly. When God telling Avraham that Sodom came to his end and it's time to rebuild Sodom, so Avraham start arguing, we can call it, and to say maybe there is righteous people there, maybe there is people, good people, maybe there is, and you would not destroy the righteous with the good, and you would save the city. And God promised him that there is no people there that deserved a different punishment. Okay. After that, there is the story of Siddom, and it's very interesting. It's a big topic that we will not talk about it today. But what is Siddom? It's um, very interesting issue. And what was the story there? The biblical story. It's also a very interesting story. And what was with Lot, the nephew of Abraham, is also a very interesting story. But in short, Sodom was a city that they were people that felt that, and they have their own strategy, own ideology, that to be good and to be bad are both not good. Every person should live for himself, totally for himself. This is Sodom. It's very interesting. It's not only to be bad. They actually did not, their ideology was not that we need to be bad. No. They thought a person is totally for himself. Doesn't matter if the other is gaining something or not gaining from something that I do. I'm taking care only about myself. In the Mishnah, there is we find in terms that called in the Mishnah or Talmud, this is Sodomic way, or Sodomic feeling, Sodomic level. For example, when father and a son have fields near each other, really close to each other, have the same border, one border of the father's field and the son, one of the sons, and the father passed away, and now all the children need to divide the inheritance, what they inherit. And the son that have, one of the children that have his field in the same border with one side of his father's field, asking from his brothers, please give me this part of the father's field, that I will have one continuing, I will not two parts, and then how will I manage two parts? I want them to be in the same level. It's the same worth, the same, no difference in worth. And if the brothers not agreeing for that, it's called in halacha midat Sodom. It's a level of Sodom. Why? Because they not losing anything, just he losing. Meaning, they're not bringing him, they're not doing for him not something non-just, but they thinking only about themselves. If they would think also about him, they will give him. And we found many places that this is the quality of this Sodom place. So it's very interesting that they deserved this punishment because they were such a people. They didn't have community affairs. They didn't have community. They didn't have life of community. Every person is individual and he only taking care of himself. This is Sodom. Okay. The angels coming to Lot to save him. Lot, the nephew of Abraham, was not a good person. But compared to the Sodomic people, he was a very good person, and he had very special qualities that he learned from his uncle. Why I'm saying he's not a good person? Because this is we can see it from stories, but this is not the point right now. He really going out of his way that the angels will be able to stay at his home as guests, and maybe sacrificing his life and his family lives to keep the guests at home. And this is, of course, quality that Abraham was strong in, the guests, and we see that Lot is also strong in that. And in the end, after many troubles, the angels telling him, okay, run away from here because we're going to destroy the city. It's very interesting. If we look closely in the words of the verses, it's very hurry. They're really in a rush. They're really running away. Because the angels need to wait until Lot is safe to destroy the city. Now, there we have a bit bizarre story. We have the story of Lot's wife. She is looking back. The angels told Lot not to look back on the city. Why? Because you can suffer with them together. This itself only shows us that he was not far from their level, by the way. So he running away, but his wife looking back, and she become a salt monument. She become a salt. What is this bizarre story? I will just say a few ideas that I saw. First of all, what happened in Siddom? So in our parasha, we sing only that the earth turned around. All the inner materials of inside came out, and also from heaven it fell fire and stone. The salt is not mentioned there, but our commentary is explaining that we know where is Siddom. Siddom is near Yam HaMelach, the Dead Sea. Everything there is salt, because everything came out from inside the ground, and with everything that came from heaven came also salt. By the way, it's very interesting. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe the prophet, in the end of the Torah, talking about cities that will not keep the laws, Jewish cities, and he mentioning that bad things can happen to cities that not observing, and he mentioning Sodom, and he's saying that there is their salt. So salt was part of the of things that was covered everything there, and that covered everything. And so she actually, what is that meaning? What is the meaning of what happened to her? That she was covered with salt. The common explanation, I even cannot call it explanation maybe, but the common look on the story is that she become salt. But it's not absolutely true, or I think if we look closely in the words of the Torah, the words is Vatehi Netziv Melach. She was salt monument. So one of this, I saw it, and I saw one of the explanations is, if she become salt, so she was a salt. She went away, she disappeared, and we had the salt. It's not not she becomes salt. And that's why he's saying she become covered with salt. And this is, we more understand what happened there, and we more understand the words of the Torah. Our sage is saying that why it necessary salt, because she had a specific story with salt. Our neighbors wanted salt and she didn't give him because she was believing in the ideology of Siddom, everyone for himself. But this is just an episode. Then Lot running with his daughters, and the daughters thinking that all the world is destroyed, and they having their father drinking wine and becoming drunk, and then they having kids from fathers, two big nations that are cousins of Jewish nation, Edom and Moab. Edom is and Moab, in both of those words is hinted that they are from their father. Okay. Now we have the same story of Abraham and Sarah, like in Egypt. We have it in Gerar, Abraham going to Gerar, moving in the land. Coming to Gerar, there is a king named Avimelech. He asked in the border, asking, who is this woman? Abraham said, my sister, and Avimelech taking Sarah for himself, and God make everybody sick there, and and then he's speaking with God in the dream, and God telling Avimelech that Abraham is praying for you, and he is a prophet, and he forgive you already. And then he bringing Sarah back. Then Yitzchak is born. Then we have old story of Yitzchak and Ishmael. Sarah sending Ishmael from home, as we learned last week, because Sarah is afraid from the negativity, negative influence that Ishmael may bring to Yitzchak. Abraham listening to Sarah, doing whatever she's saying, as God telling him. Then we have the last story, that this is maybe the main topic that we will talk today. It's about the sacrifice and the story of the Akedah, the story that Abraham going to sacrifice his son, Yitzchak. What is the story? The story was that God telling Abraham, you should go to a place that I will show you, and you should there sacrifice the only child, Yitzchak. Even though we have Ishmael, but Abraham, God calling Yitzchak the only child. And our sage is saying that Abraham, every word, your son, or Ishmael, your only son. Also Ishmael is the only one for his mother. And then God telling Yitzchak. So Abraham waking up in the morning early and going to the place that God showing him. In the way, our sages telling us in Midrash, they have many difficulties to go. It's very hard, not easy. There is water, and there is rain, and there is fire, and it's how to go, but they're going. After 3 days, he's seeing the place, telling all his servants, stay here. And Ishmael was between them, stay here. They going. On the way, Yitzchak asking Abraham, his father, I see in the woods, I see in the fire, where is the sheep that we're going to sacrifice? Abraham telling him, God will show us the sheep. Okay, they going there. Abraham building the altar, and then he preparing the woods. He holding the knife. He putting Yitzchak above the the woods, and then God telling him, angel of God telling him, do not touch the boy and don't do for him anything. Then Abraham realized that it was a test, and then he getting a blessing from angels that because if you stand, you did not disappointed God from not have nothing bad from in your belief, you should have many blessings and so on and so forth. Now, about the test, we know this was the last test that Abraham had. Abraham had 10 tests, and this was the last one. Our Savior is telling us that it was the biggest test that Abraham had. Not only that, when God asking Abraham is saying the word na. Na means please. Please do not fail me in this test. Why? Because if you're failing in this test, all the rest of the test not worth it. Okay, what was the tests? The other 9. So we learned about the going to Egypt, taking Sarah, going to Israel. We know stories that happened in the Midrash, going to the fire of Nimrod. The story was that Abraham was a child, and he starts doing propaganda that there is only one creator and one God, and it was against the king, so the king forced him to jump into the fire, and Abraham did it and was saved. This is the story. Before we continuing, we have last week I mentioned Midrash Pliya, a wonder Midrash. In our Parashat we have another 2 famous that have explanation. I would say 1. The Midrash saying about Eshet Chayil. We learned that Eshet Chayil is a song that we sing in every Shabbat about our wives, but the original text was said by Abraham in his wife's grave. That was the final word that Abraham said about his wife when he buried her. So every words referring to some quality of Sarah, and we learned about the beginning. Batach ba lev ba'ala, her husband trusted her, and then was not a problem of money, and that was referring to the story of Sarah in Egypt, that because Abraham trusted Sarah and brought her to the king, they in the end, not only she was saved, they got a lot of wealthiness, a lot of money because of that story. So this is what we learned. There is a midrash that's saying about the fourth verse in Eshet Chayil. The fourth verse is Darshat Semer Upishtim Vatas Bechefetz Kapea. She demanded. Darsha, I have many explanations, but the simple explanation, Darsha, she demanded, meaning she required, she had Tzemer ufishtim. Tzemer, it's wool. Fishtim is another kind of fragment, and we will. I will 1 second. So she demanded, so the wool and the other fragment, and the Midrash saying that this verse referring about something that happened in our parasha. What? Sarah demanded from Abraham to send Ishmael. She separated between Ishmael and Yitzchak. Okay. Question is, what is the connection? Why the separation between Ishmael and Yitzchak? In Russian, pishtim, it's Billy. In English, it's linen. So she had, or she gained, she acquired linen and wool. So the Midrash saying it's referring to the story of Ishmael and Yitzchak. Okay, so there is few explanation about this wonder Midrash. One of the explanation is that it was a very big debate in the house. Abraham told Sarah, I'm sorry, I would not send my son Ishmael. Sarah told Abraham, you should send him. It's not a good influence on our son. Our new baby boy, Yitzchak. He have his older brother, Ishmael, and it's not a good influence. Send him from home. But what Sarah truly demanded, it was not only sending Ishmael from home. It was also, he is not your son, Ishmael. He is your servant's son. But God calling Yitzchak your only child, because this is your inheritance, will go through Yitzchak. He will continue your legacy. So Ishmael should not have any part in your inheritance. Abraham said, this I cannot do. Why? Because according to the Torah, you should not abandon your older son from the inheritance. In fact, you should give him double. It's important to remember, and it's very interesting. There is two kinds of mitzvot in the Torah. There is mitzvot that are positive commandments, you should do. It's called mitzvot aseh. And there is mitzvot that they are not positive. You should be careful not to do. So to give your inheritance, that the older son will get inherited, will inherit double, is not a positive commandment, even though it could be, but it's not. The Torah not saying you should give the older son double, or you should give him part. The commandment is you should be careful not to give him less than double. So Abraham telling Sarah, how can I send Yitzchak from all the inheritance? I am careful to do all the mitzvot. So Sarah answered Abraham, you have a mistake. Let's ask God. Abraham asking God, and God telling Abraham, you should listen to your wife. Now, it's not enough for Abraham. It's true that God telling me to listen to you, but how can I abandon this mitzvah? I'm trying to do everything. So then Sarah came with an idea. Told Abraham, there is a rule in oral Torah, of course it was before, that if you have a positive commandment and a negative commandment, that they are both the opposite, you should do the positive. The positive is more strong than the mitzvah lo taseh, than the other kind of the mitzvot. How we know that? From tzitzit. Tzitzit is a mitzvah that the original mitzvah is to have linen and wool together. According to Torah, linen and wool cannot be together. It's sha'atnez, it's called. It's combining two separate linen. Those specific one is not allowed, it's forbidden. So this is a negative. I don't know, negative is not the correct word, but this is mitzvah that we not do. We need to be careful not to do it. But the mitzvah of tzitzit, in tzitzit we do combining linen and wool. Why? Because this is a positive commandment. But the positive commandment is more strong than the commandment not to combine linen and wool. So Sarah darshat semer ufishtim. She did not demanded. The Midrash saying, the explanation of the wonder Midrash is, she did not demanded the wool and linen. She learned, according to the Hebrew language, darsha, it's also to learn from. She learned from the laws of wool and linen, of shatnez, that the positive commandment is more strong than the negative commandment. So then she telling Abraham, you afraid from the law of the negative commandment not to send the older son, but you have a positive commandment from God to listen to me. And this is stronger. So this is one of the explanation of this wonder Midrash. Okay. This was by the way. Now, we need to say something, I think, foundational about the story of Akedat Yitzchak. And this is the point that we will take with us today. The question is, what's so special about the story of sacrificing Yitzchak? No one's saying it's not special. But the question is, what is so special? And we have two levels of this question. First level is, many people would agree to sacrifice their son if God himself will ask them. Not only they would agree, they did in the generations from Abraham till today. Thousands of fathers and mothers sacrificed their son for the name of God. God forbid, unfortunately. But this is our history. People sacrifices everything they got, including their own family, to the name of God. And we know the famous story of Chana v'shivat banea, Chana and her 7 kids, that she encouraged every kid in front of her eyes not to bow to idol and to be punished by death, and died in front of her eyes, not only in theory like Yitzchak, in practical. And in the end she sent to her kids, you go Evan, tell Abraham you sacrifice 1, I sacrifice 7. So how it's the main story. And this is first level of the question. We can ask it more deep. Abraham himself, this is the 10th test. Not only the 10th, as we said, we quote from our sages before, God telling Abraham, please. And if Abraham would fail from this in this test, everybody would say all the tests are worthless. Why they are worthless? What was the test? One of them, as we said before, is Abraham jumping to the fire and he could die. Of course, according to nature, he would die. It was a miracle. So to sacrifice his son is more strong than this? Let's say it's more strong to sacrifice his son and to jump to the fire. But to say it's worthless, it's not understandable. So not only according to the rest of the generation, we can compare and see if it was or wasn't the biggest test that Jewish people had. Even in Abraham's life is not so very clear. And what making it so special that it showed that all the rest of the tests were great as they were. So, there is a story, by the way, I'm saying, about Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, when he was in his Rebbe's synagogue. His Rebbe was the Magid, the Rabbi of Mezrich, and there was the cleaning Hasidim that were working in cleaning the synagogue and cleaning all the ovens of the synagogue. They were like the lowest people, we can say, but they were serious also, of course. And he one time sleeping or lying down near one of the ovens because it was cold, and he hearing three of those Hasidim talking, one asking them, what is so important in the story? What's so special about the story of Akedah, of Abraham sacrificing his son? If God will speak to me, telling me to sacrifice his son, of course I would do it. So he's saying, maybe, I think, Abraham did it quick. He did not only did it, he, in the next morning, started going. And this is what's so big about this story. The other one said, I would also do it quick. If God himself telling me, he did it happily. This is what's special about the Akedah. The third one said, I would also do it happily. He was happy when God told him not to sacrifice Yitzchak in the end, as he was happy before, because he knew that in doing another commandment of God, it was no difference to him. The devotion was the same. And Alter Rebbe finished, they were all true speaking in their level. They were right. The first one was in this level, the second one was in this level, and the third one was in his own level. So, what is the answer? What's so special about Abraham in this story? So, as we said before, Abraham sacrificed his life to the name of God before, but many people sacrifice their life for ideology. It's not something that only Abraham did, and that's even something that only Jews did. It's also something that other people doing. They're sacrificing their life for ideology. In the story of the Akedah, Abraham did not only sacrifice his life. He sacrificed his life career. He sacrificed what he believes in. And he sacrificed the name of God to do what God's doing, what God wants. Abraham in the Akedah showed a total different devotion to God. When Abraham, we can say in few levels, when Abraham jumping to the fire, he's simply doing it showed of devotion to ideology. His ideology is that God is one. I can jump to the fire to show this ideology. It's very big level of believing in your beliefs. But it was fit. You're so believer that you jump into the fire. When Abraham sacrificing his son, what does that mean? It means that after Abraham became 100 years old, and he was then 137. All the world know about Abraham. He's so wealthy. All the world know about Abraham's work to convince everyone that there is only one true God. Everybody know how many years God promising Abraham to have kids. How many people know what Abraham how many troubles Abraham had and how many miracles Abraham had only because of God. And God promised him to have that he will have a kid, and he had. And from this kid, all the ideology of Abraham will continue. And then God telling Abraham, you should kill your son, you should sacrifice him. What Abraham sacrificed when he's sacrificing Yitzchak? He's sacrificing all the work that he had all those years. Because then all the ideology destroyed. No continuance to Abraham. The name of God will be destroyed. People will not appreciate the name of God. People will not believe in him. So, what is this devotion? This devotion is something different. It's not devotion to bring the name of God, to make the name of God bigger, to make God more famous. It's devotion to do exactly what God wants. It's totally different kind of devotion. I'm not here to prove everyone that God is great, to show everybody the true power of God, that he can save you from fire, or to do, as we call it, Kiddush Hashem. Everybody would say, wow, how big is God? No, everybody say exactly the opposite. There is no God, and if there is God, he's crazy that he bringing this miracle and then doing exactly the opposite. And Abraham did not care. Why? This is what God telling me to do, and this is what I will do. It's devotion to the true and simple will of God. What God telling me to do, I would do. This devotion, this what make Abraham special. And this is what we inherit from Abraham. This is the continuation of Abraham. This is why it's so special that Abraham do it with Yitzchak, and Yitzchak is the continuation of Abraham. And this is why we're reminding ourselves this story. And this is one of the foundational story of the Jewish nation, because it's not devotion to make the name of God greater and bigger. It's devotion to the words of God, devotion to the simple idea what God wants from me. This is what's so special about this story. This is exactly what we need to learn from it. Sometimes we think, it's true that the Torah said you should not work in Shabbat, or you should not do any other thing. But if I will do it, more people will come close to God. The name of God will be bigger. The name of God will be greater if God will gain more if I will not keep this detail. And this is a mistake, because God is in the details. God is in what he commanding you to do. And he commanding us to do what he said in the Torah. Not more. You know the ideology, you know the idea behind, and it's true, everything, but it's all after the basic. You cannot jump to do more than the basic, what God telling you to do. Abraham could say, God, let's not do it. Let's do something else. Let's continue the idea. You want you to be famous? No. God wants you to do what he wants you to do, what he's telling you to do. Shabbat Shalom, and have a great weekend. All good news.